Good morning. Tuesday, April 21st, 2020, during the lockdown. Om Agana Timrandasya Ganagana Saraka Chaksurun Miritam Yanatajmai Sri Guruvan Maha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yanabhutare Sayam Rupakara Mayam Darati Swaparandikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Sri Rupam Shagutatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sajevam Sadvaitam Savlutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Larita Shri Vishakanvitam Scha Nama Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Pasraya Bhutare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvishes Sanyavadi Paskata De Sarani Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Thanks for joining us, Govinda Dev, Joe, Hare Krishna, Mala. This is the third verse in the second chapter of the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's quite a long purport. I don't know if I'll read the whole purport. Ya shanu bhavam akira shruti saram ekam adhyatma dipam atitarik shatam tamo andam samsarinam kurunayaha purana goyam tam vyasha shunam upayami gurum muninam. Jimmy, namaste. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him, Sukadeva Goswami, the spiritual master of all the sages, the son of Vyasadeva, who, out of his great compassion for those gross materialists who struggled to cross over the darkest region of material existence, spoke this most confidential supplement to the cream of Vedic knowledge after having personally assimilated by experience. And this is the purport by Srila Prabhupada. In his prayer, Srila Sutta Goswami practically summarizes a complete introduction to the Srimad Bhagavatam. By the way, Srimad means beautiful, and Bhagavatam means it's a beautiful story of the absolute truth. Bhagavad Gita is the song of God spoken directly by Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam is the story of Krishna and his all devotees as they appear on different planets at different times in cosmic space. Srimad Bhagavatam is a natural commentary on this cream. Srila Sukadeva Goswami was a thoroughly realized master, and that's going to be our theme today. What does it mean to be a self-realized soul? What are the symptoms of a self-realized soul? And consequently, he also personally realized the commentary Srimad Bhagavatam. And just to show his boundless mercy upon bewildered materialistic men who want to cross completely over nescience, he recited for the first time this confidential knowledge. Prabhupada continues here in the purport, there's no point in arguing that a materialistic man can be happy. No materialistic creature, be he the great Brahma or an insignificant ant, can be happy. Everyone tries to make a permanent plan for happiness, but everyone is baffled by the laws of material nature. Case in point, coronavirus. Therefore, the materialistic world is called the darkest region of God's creation. Yet the unhappy materialist can get out of it simply by desiring to get out. That sounds pretty simple. Unfortunately, they are so foolish that they do not want to escape. Therefore, they are compared to the camel who relishes thorny twigs because he likes the taste of the twigs mixed with blood. He does not realize that it is his own blood and that his tongue is being cut by the thorns. Similarly to the materialist, his own blood is as sweet as honey, and although he is harassed by his own material creations, he does not wish to escape. Such materialists are called karmis, fruitive workers. Out of hundreds of thousands of karmis, only a few may feel tired of material engagement and desire to get out of the labyrinth. Such intelligent persons are called jnanis. That means seekers of knowledge. The Vedanta Sutra is directed to such jnanis. But Srila Vyasadeva, being the incarnation of the Supreme Lord, could foresee the misuse of the Vedanta Sutra by unscrupulous men, and therefore he personally supplemented the Vedanta Sutra with the Bhagavad Purana. It is clearly said that this Bhagavatam is the original commentary on the Brahma Sutras. Srila Vyasadeva also instructed the Bhagavatam to his own son, Srila Sukadeva Goswami, who was already at the liberated stage of transcendence, Srila Sukadeva realized it. Again, we get that word realized it personally and then explained it. By the mercy of Sri Sukadeva, the Bhagavad Sutra is available for all those sincere souls who want to get out of material existence. So there's a couple more paragraphs here, but let me just comment. We have lamas here. They're of the camel family. They're called camelids. And I also notice that they all eat thorny twigs, and their eyes get flat and straight, indicative of contentment. And when their ears are up, they're happy. When their ears are down, they're not happy. So with their ears up and their eyes kind of slanted and their jaws go sideways, they eat these thorny twigs. And I've never seen blood coming myself, but that's what happens when you eat thorns. It causes blood. And then you drink your own blood and you think that, oh, how tasty it is. Why does Prabhupada gives that example? Is an ounce of semina represents 16 times its own weight in blood. Semina is such a refined, sublime substance that it takes 16 times the amount of blood to make one drop of semen. So what is the main pleasure of those who are bound in this material world? It's yan maitunadi sukamedi griham shukam tucham. Sex pleasure are the unseen shackles that keep everyone attached to this material world. I remember Rita Ananda, I listened to a tape one time. He was illustrating this point, saying hypothetically you're down in some South American country. It's one of those countries where you get a knock on the door at midnight and you never see your grandfather again, where bodies are literally floating in the river. The economy is non-existent. People are living in cardboard shacks. And some or other you find yourself down there as a tourist or journalist or whatever it is, and you're thinking, man, I can't wait to get out of this. I'm not going to use the same terms as Donald Trump, but you get the idea. So you're walking through this shambles of a civilization, and you walk past a little hut, and you see inside the hut a nice-looking ankle of a young lady, nicely toned ankle. And Rita Anandamar says in the lecture, you immediately think, well, this place isn't so bad after all. So those are the shackles. They're not visible. But sex desire are the invisible shackles by which we're bound in this material world. And hardly anybody's immune. It says, Nidraya riyate vyaktam vyavayanacha divas chartaharajam katumba barananava. During the day, they're working hard to get money and to maintain their families. And at night, they're sleeping and having sex, which means basically shedding their own blood, thinking that it's pleasurable. Everybody is attached to this fleeting pleasure, which lasts only a minute. Even from Lord Brahma down to the insignia of an ant, Prabhupada says nobody can be happy because they equate happiness with the flickering pleasure of sense desire. Fact is that whether you're high or whether you're low, the pleasure is the same. You drink milk out of a golden pot or you drink milk out of an iron pot, the taste of milk is the same. So eating, sleeping, sex, life, and defending, it's the same, whether you're Lord Brahma or whether you're an ant or a pig. Similarly, we're compared to living beings who are chained. The gunas, the three modes, goodness, passion, ignorance, chain the living beings to this material world. So you might say Lord Brahma has golden chains and the pig has iron chains. What's the difference, basically? The point is that we're bound, we're conditioned by birth, death, disease, and old age. And so only the intelligent person thinks of escaping. This is a sign of intelligence. Sometimes we use the word escapism in a negative way. Oh, you don't want to deal, you don't want to face reality, you want to escape. And that usually refers to people that, take drugs or sleep or watch TV all the time. But to want to escape birth, death, disease, and old age, go back to home, back to Godhead, to reestablish the spirit in the eternal spiritual world from whence it comes, That's actually the sign of intelligence. And the reason that devotional service is so rarely performed, and amongst those who perform devotional service, a self-realized soul is one among thousands, is because nobody wants to escape the material atmosphere. They are resigned. They're content with birth, death, disease, and old age, and a little bit of sex, a little bit of food in between. And they settle for so much less than what is their potential. Even there's a story of Indra. One time he was cursed for some transgression to take birth as a hog. And after he took birth as a hog, he met a female hog, and then they had sex, and then she had babies, and then he was thinking, this is my wife, these are my kids, this is my house, this is my land, this is my trough. And he began to get very possessive and attached. Hammameti. The vocabulary of the attached person is always speaking in terms of I and mine. So even Indra, who was the king of the heavenly planets, he was starting to think of my sow, my piglets, my trough, my barnyard. And when the time of his being cursed to live as a hog ended, and denizens of the heavenly planets came to take him back, he was reluctant to go. He had become covered by Maya. First he was thrown, and then he was covered. These are the two energies. This is the way Maya acts in a twofold way. First, we're thrown down from a higher position to a lower position, and then we're covered. We begin to rationalize and accommodate less than ideal circumstances. And therefore, Prabhupada says here, out of hundreds of thousands of karmis, fruitive workers, only a few may feel tired of material engagement and desire to get out of the labyrinth. Such intelligent persons are called gyanis. Oh yeah, while we're talking about lamas eating thorns and so on and so forth, Vaibhavi is trying to get some of our females pregnant. And so that there's a lot of mating going on now on the property. But if a lama is already pregnant, or because some of them might still be pregnant from last year and they might not have just given birth. So if a lama is already pregnant, our male, his name is Kapil. So he's all excited, he's all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. He sees a female and he's attracted by her movements and her bodily conformation and so on and so forth. So he very enthusiastically, with his hormones raging, goes for the female to mount her. But if she's already pregnant, she has no desire. The last thing she wants is to fulfill the desires of the mate. So as he's coming towards her, she turns around and right in his face. And I'll tell you, take it from me, there's nothing that will eliminate sex desire quicker than a wad of grass in your face that's been through 4 stomachs and back up again. That's it, man. No, you don't want to have sex. You don't want to eat at least for another 24 hours. So that's what he gets. That's what he gets when he goes to satisfy his lusty desires, like that. And so out of thousands and thousands of conditioned souls who are living like this, only a very rare one wants to solve the problems of birth, death, disease, and old age. And they're called Gyanis. Now, for the Gyanis, Vyasadeva, after having compiled all the Vedic literatures, put together the Vedanta Sutras as a commentary on the Vedas. Now, the Vedanta Sutras are for people who are high IQs, philosophically inclined, and also it's pretty much for a previous time when people were more acute intellectually. They had longer lifespans. And the Vedanta Sutras are probably described as aphorisms, pithy little sayings that you kind of have to have a very incisive intellect in order to penetrate and unlock the mysteries of these pithy little aphorisms. Now, practically nobody, even those who are philosophically inclined, in this day and age will get the gist of the Vedanta Sutras. They will all misinterpret them, which is exactly what's happened. Instead of using the Vedanta Sutras as a signpost, as an indicator to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, most of the mental speculators, many of whom are followers of an acharya called Sankaracharya, they used the Vedanta Sutras to try to prove an impersonal divinity, an impersonal absolute. And of course, if the absolute is impersonal, we're also impersonal, then you take off of the table all the wonderful options of dualism, of give and take, service, love, and reciprocation. And so in order that that not be done, here it's described, but Srila Vyasadeva being the incarnation of the Lord, and the Lord wants us to love him, not to negate our respective personalities, but rather to establish our spiritual personalities, our spiritual sensitivity, and engage in reciprocal, resonating love and devotion. So Vyasadeva, being the incarnation of the Supreme Lord, could foresee the misuse of the Vedanta Sutra by unscrupulous men, and therefore he personally supplemented the Vedanta Sutra with Bhagavad Purana. Unscrupulous men. On his deathbed, the great Acharya, Shankaracharya, he told his disciples, this was his parting words, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Mudhamate. He foresaw that they would misunderstand the Vedanta Sutras as a commentary on impersonalism. And he said, as his last dying words practically, worship Krishna, worship Krishna, worship Krishna, my dear fools. And yet they proved themselves to be unscrupulous men because they didn't worship Krishna. They worshiped the impersonal Brahman, the ineffable aspect of the Lord instead of the supreme personality of Godhead. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, right in the beginning, Vyasadeva says, there is not just the one impersonal aspect of the absolute truth, but there are two higher categories of Bhagavan. Vedanti tat tat vam vidas brahmiti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabdyate. It says the full realization of the absolute is in three phases. The first is Brahman, which is the effulgence, the impersonal glow, which rolls off the transcendental body of the Lord. And then the second, which is a higher level, is called Paramatma. And that is that expansion of the Lord who resides within the hearts of all living beings. And it is the yogis who realize the Paramatma within the heart by sitting for long periods of time and turning their attention inward. But then finally, there is Bhagavan. Bhag means opulences and Van means possessor. So Bhagavan is Aishwarya Shamagasha Viryasya Yasa Jnanam Vyagarasa Sanam Bhagamatinganam. Bhagavan is defined as that personality who is full with 6 opulences: wealth, strength, beauty, fame, knowledge, and humility. So Bhagavan includes Paramatma and it includes Brahman. And it is the highest level of realization whereby you come face to face with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and realize him as a divine personality. Unfortunately, the mental speculators, most of the followers of Sankaracharya, and so-called followers of the Vedanta Sutra, they only realize the Brahman aspect of the absolute truth. They only realize the impersonalist aspect. And so to get them to the next level, or to prevent the mass of people from being misled by their commentaries, Srila Vyasadeva wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam as a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, which in itself was a commentary on the Vedas. So it says, by the mercy of Srila Shukadeva, and then Sukadeva spoke it, it is said here, for the first time, to Parikshit, the assembly of sages. Shukadeva Goswami was in that assembly. After Parikshit left his body, then Sukadeva went to Shanaka Rishi and the other sages at Naimisharanya, and he's repeating it now for the second time. Srila Shukadeva Goswami realized it personally and then explained it. By the mercy of Srila Shukadeva, the Bhagavad Vedanta Sutra is available for all those sincere souls who want to get out of material existence. Now, Srimad Bhagavatam is called Nigama Kalpaturu Galitam Phalam. It is the ripened fruit of all the Vedic literatures, inasmuch as it talks only about bhakti. With Gyan, and obviously Prabhupada says the karmis, the fruitive workers, are after sex and children and property, and they always speak in terms of I and mine. He says they're disqualified right from the get-go. There's no materialist, he says, who has ever been happy, truly happy, spiritually happy in the history of the world. But those who want to get out of that quandary, that quagmire, they try to elevate themselves, leverage themselves out of materialistic life through the exercise of their intellect and their knowledge. And they come to the level of understanding that I'm not this body, that I really don't have to get involved in the affairs of this body. Rather, I am of a different nature. I am spirit. Aham Brahmasmi. The pitfall then becomes, I am spirit, God is spirit, so then I'm God. And the problem with the mental speculators is they end up concluding that they are God because they are of the same spiritual essence as God. And in doing so, they take away the qualities of God. Oftentimes, the impersonalists will refer to the Lord as Saguna or Nirguna, that God, and they visualize him as being an energy force, a light, and so they take away from him his qualities. He is without qualities. And the words Saguna and Nirguna are indeed used to refer to Lord Krishna, but they mean without material qualities. Not without qualities, but without material qualities. His qualities are so much more transcendent and unlimited than ours. For instance, in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, Sarvata panipadam tat, sarvatas sutima loke, savmarita tishtati. It says, for him, his hands and legs are everywhere. His eyes and ears are everywhere. His mouths are everywhere. He sees everything. So that means that he is at one and the same time a unique individual in the spiritual world, in the topmost planet of the spiritual world, and he is also here. That's why, although Krishna is countless light years away, when you bow down at the altar and you offer on the altar before the deity of Krishna a plate, patram pushpam phalam toyam, flower, fruit, leaf, or water, Krishna accepts it. He accepts it because his hands and legs are everywhere. If you offer me something, I only reach out 3 feet or so. But if you offer Krishna something, because he is simultaneously, inconceivably, apart from and non-different from this material creation, he'll accept any offering of flower, fruit, leaf, and water that you make to him. So he has qualities, but his qualities are not like ours. My arm is reaching out 3 feet. His arm is reaching across all the spiritual worlds, all the material worlds, right down here to Spanish Fork, in order to accept his offering. And another difference between me and God is that I can only eat with my mouth, I can only smell with my nose, I can only see with my eyes, I can only hear with my ears, I can only touch with my fingers. But he is called Anyaniyasya Sek Alendriya. Indriya means senses. So his senses are non-differentiated. That means he can eat the offering by hearing your prayers. He can eat the offering by seeing the offering. He can speak with his eyes. He can hear with his nose. Because there's no difference between his inside and his outside. He's spirit through and through. There's no limit, there's no differentiation between his senses. So when it's described, the Lord is described as Saguna or Nirguna, without qualities, it means he's without material qualities. Basically, in essence, it means he's without any limitations. So continuing here, Prabhupada says, Srimad Bhagavatam is the only transcendental literature meant for those who are paramahamsas and completely free from the material disease called malice. The Mayavadis, or the impersonalists, are envious of the personality of Godhead, despite Sripad Sankaracharya's admission that Narayan, the personality of Godhead, is above the material creation. The Mayavadis cannot have access to the Bhagavatam, but those who are really anxious to get out of this material existence may take shelter of this Bhagavatam because it is uttered by the liberated Srila Sukadeva Goswami. It is a transcendental torchlight by which one can see perfectly the transcendental absolute, realized as Brahman on the lowest stage, Paramatma on the next highest stage, and Bhagavan on the highest stage. Therefore, it's said in the Bhagavad Gita, Manusyanam sahashishu kashti yatati siddhai yatataram pisadib kashti mambiri tatparaham. Out of thousands and thousands of men, most of them are karmis, fruitive workers. And out of thousands and thousands of fruitive workers, one may be a jnani, a mental speculator, approach the Lord through knowledge. And of thousands and thousands of jnanis, one may find out about the personality of Godhead and devotional service, through Scripture or through a bona fide spiritual master. And of thousands who find out, then one may execute. And of thousands who are executing, one may actually become a self-realized soul. So no wonder that Krishna says, I know everybody. He's in the heart. He accompanies each and every living being as the overseer and the permitter, the witnesser. He witnesses all of our activities. He witnesses how fully it is we've turned away from him, how fully forgetful we are of him. And nevertheless, he doesn't abandon us. He's faithful. He sticks with us closer than a brother, but he knows more about us than we know ourselves, and yet we don't know anything about him. He's hidden, you might say, within our own hearts, like that. No one knows me as I am. Na veda na kaschana. So if someone does come to know Krishna, that person is called a Mahatma. And such a person is very rare. Now, how does one come to know Krishna? Certainly not through fruitive work. And there are limitations to our knowledge and to our intellect. It says, Vedashu durlabham adarama atma bhakto. Very difficult, even thousands of years ago, to know Krishna through the Vedas. Very difficult to know Krishna through Vedanta Sutras, even thousands of years ago. Today, impossible. Not only are most of the Vedas missing, but our lives are short-lived, our intellects are shortened. It's a materialistic age in which hardly anybody is serious about spiritual life. So it is said that nobody knows me. It's a very, very great soul. It's a Mahatma who knows me. And how is it that one comes to know the Lord? How is it that such a rare soul comes to know the Lord? And here it's described. Atas Krishna namani nabhavid grimindriya sevan mukhi jivado shayam evas paradyadaham. No one can understand Krishna as he is by the blunt material senses. Certainly not by seeing, touching, tasting, and smelling. The Lord's form is transcendent, sublime, small in the atom. If you can't see the atom, you certainly can't see Krishna who resides within the atom, okay? So you cannot understand with the blunt senses. Now, more refined, more subtle than the senses is the mind. The mind has less conditions, has less restrictions. The mind can consume, learn, absorb so much more than the blunt senses. In fact, most of the activities of the senses are based on things that we've received, transmissions that we received from the mind. Okay. However, the mind itself, although it can travel at the speed of the wind, or we say the speed of the mind, is still one of the blunt material senses. Krishna is so much more subtle, so much more refined than the mind itself. But the furthest exercise of the mind brings you to the conclusion that I'm not this body. But the problem is, neither does it explain the significance of the body, nor does it explain the capabilities of the soul. You're left pretty much with half of the picture, pretty much with half-truths. A mental speculator who realizes that he has nothing to do with this material world generally doesn't know what to do with the body. He doesn't know the utilization. He doesn't know the purpose of the body. He simply determines that because the body is temporary, therefore it's illusory. Therefore it's false. Same thing with the material world. This whole material world comes and goes. So the Mayavadi, the impersonalists, basically negate this phenomenal world. Their favorite saying is, Brahma Satyam, Jagat Mityam. Spirit is true, and this material world is false. So with such a condescending, demeaning view of matter, they can never come to the position of engaging the material body and the senses in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They don't even acknowledge that the Spirit itself has senses. They don't realize through mental speculation that the senses are innate within the living being. And what happens generally, if you're on the path of Gyan, is that you try to subdue the senses by repressing them, by negating them, by tamping them down. Minimize your eating, minimize your social intercourse, minimize what you see, what you smell, what you taste. But that is a course which is doomed to failure. Why? Because we are sentient beings. In our original spiritual forms, we are sentient beings. So you cannot deny the senses, because the senses are part and parcel of the liberated soul. Therefore it is said, Araha kachena padam patanti adho nadriti yasmada nagreha yanera vindaksha vimuktimania trayastadba vishuddha buddhi. By mental power, by mental effort, the jnanis, or the speculators, can separate themselves from the fruitive workers who are just running around like ants. They can separate themselves. They can achieve altitude. They can achieve perspective. They can get themselves above the madding crowd. But the problem is they have not taken shelter of the service of the lotus feet and the lotus-eyed Lord. So however high they rise, because they fail to engage their senses in the service, their spiritual senses in the service of the Lord, they eventually come down and they engage their senses in terms of. Now the jnanis, when they come down, they don't ever generally get back into gross fruitive work. They'll engage in humanitarian and philanthropic activities. But the point I'm making is that the mind will not sustain you on a spiritual platform. It is only by exercising the senses in the service of the supreme sensual being that one gets fixed in devotional service. Another example that the impersonalists often use, and you've probably heard this yourself, is that everything being impersonal, we are like drops of water. And originally we were with the ocean. We were like one little drop of Brahman in an ocean of Brahman. We were one little drop of spirit in an ocean of spirit. And we were meant to be one with that, non-differentiated. This is what the impersonalists say. And then somehow or other, we were separated from the ocean, and then we became conscious of ourselves as a drop. My name is so-and-so, and I live here and this and that. And our identity, our personality, all of it came into being when we separated from Brahman, and our suffering commenced at that point when we separated from the Great Spirit, you might say. And so their practice of self-realization, their practice of liberation is simply to merge again and to become one with the ocean, to put aside all thoughts of self, to put aside all thoughts of being a sentient being, and just kind of annihilate oneself by becoming one again with Brahman. However, Prabhupada takes that same analogy a step further, that whereas the drop is not really established in the ocean, it's kind of marginal, you might say. The hot sunlight warming the surface of the ocean extracts the drop as a little vapor and elevates it and becomes part of the cloud. And then, of course, the drop wants to recycle and go back into the ocean. But there's another category of inhabitants of the ocean that can never be extracted from the ocean, and those are the ones that have their forms, their bodies. Whales, giant octopus, tumangillas, a man of war, barracuda, they all live deep within the ocean in their forms, and there's no question of them being evaporated or extracted. So that's the difference between the personalists and the impersonalists. The personalists are barely in the material atmosphere. They're only one with the impersonal Brahman. They have overlooked the fact that they have senses. They're not satisfied. They're not completed, just hovering as a particle, you might say, of sunlight. And they inevitably come back down to this material world and material activities, because the senses will not be repressed. The senses will not be denied. But devotees, their senses are fully engaged in the service of the Lord. So there's nothing to fear from the senses. Senses don't have to be repressed. Example is given that the senses are very dangerous. Either repressing them or indulging them, repressing them like the jnanis or indulging them like the fruitive workers, it's very dangerous, like a poisonous snake. It'll get you one way or another. However, the devotees take the senses and engage them, chanting the holy names of the Lord with their tongue, eating prasadam, spiritual food offered to the Lord, seeing the beautiful form of the deity, smelling the incense and flowers which are offered to the deity, hearing the sweet kirtans and the discussions of Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes from the lips of pure devotees, and playing musical instruments or offering arti to the Lord. So when the senses are nicely and pleasingly and satisfactorily engaged in the service of the Lord, they're no longer dangerous. And the example is given, no one has to fear a snake whose poisonous fangs have been removed. The other day I was giving a Sunday feast talk and came across a story about Robert Schuller, a Christian preacher. And he said that when he was a boy, he was making the same point. He said when he was a boy in elementary school, he learned a trick of catching bees, and he had a wet cloth. So he'd put the bees on the wet cloth, and for some reason the bees would sting the wet cloth, and their stingers would get removed. So then he would take these bees to school and let them crawl over him, and the girls were like amazed at his bravery. It really wasn't bravery at all, because he knew the stingers had been removed. So the difference between devotional service and mental speculation is that the devotees can go ahead and use their senses in the service of the Lord and not be afraid of any flashback, of any burn back. Whereas the mental speculators don't really know they don't really value the material body, they don't really value the material world, and they don't really know that the nature of the soul is that it is a sentient being. So Prabhupada gives us symptoms by which we can determine who is a realized soul. He says here, Vishaya vinavartatena rahasya dehinam, rasha varjam rashupyasham, param drishtva nivartate. Those who are self-realized souls, they're not after material sense gratification. They're not afraid of the senses. They are engaged in the service of the Lord, experiencing a higher taste, and having experienced a higher taste, they are no longer hankering after the lower taste. One such devotee engaged in the service of the Lord was one of the 12 Alwars of South India. His name was Kulashekar Maharaj. And after he became engaged in devotional service to the Lord, he said these stunning words, Yadavi Mama Cheta Krishna Paradavinda Nava Nava Rasha Dumani Adjanta Marishin Tadavati Bata Nani Sangame Shamariamane Bhavati Mukha Bikara Shushta Nishtivanam Cha. You remember earlier we said the main shackles by which most people, 99.9% of the people, are bound in this material world is sex desire. So just see what happened to Maharaj Kulashekhar's sex desire after he began to engage his senses in the service of the Lord. And he says, since I have engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing ever new, Nava Nava Rasha, pleasure in him, whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought and my lips curl with distaste. Now he's not dissing women, he's not putting down women, no. He respects women, but as sister and as mother, not as objects of exploitation. That is no longer a part of his psyche. He's so much enjoying and experiencing a higher taste from serving the Lord. And if he has sex desire, he does it according to the regulative conditions for having God-conscious children. Kamoshmin Bharatarshava. Krishna says, I am the strength of the strong, I am the prowess of the athletic, and I am also that sex desire which is not contrary to religious principles. So devotees may have children, but they're not overwhelmed, they're not bound by, they're not tyrannized by sex desire. They use sex desire in the same way they use all of the other senses in the transcendental service of the Lord. Prabhupada continues here by commenting, a person in Brahma Yoga or Krishna consciousness is so absorbed in the loving service of the Lord that he loses his taste for material sense pleasure altogether. The highest pleasure in terms of matter is sex pleasure. Prabhupada says the whole world is moving under its spell, and a materialist cannot work at all without this motivation. Isn't that true? But a person engaged in Krishna consciousness can work with greater vigor without sex pleasure, which he avoids. That is the test of a spiritually realized soul. Spiritual realization and sex pleasure go ill together. A Krishna conscious person is not attracted to any kind of sense pleasure due to his being a liberated soul. We find also this verse, I believe it's spoken by Uddhava. Yad pada pankaja palasa vilasha bhakta karmasanam gratideva gratiyanti shanda tadavam narikta matyo yatipur shrotiganam stam aranam bhaja vasudevam. He says, just try to worship in devotional service the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Even great sages are not able to control the force of the senses as effectively as those who are engaged in transcendental bliss by serving the lotus feet of the Lord, uprooting the deep-grown desire for fruitive activities. Who is a self-realized soul? A self-realized soul is one who not for a moment sees us as separate or as apart from Krishna. Krishna, 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 Krishna. Just like a leaf is meant to be attached to the tree. Similarly, a self-realized soul is one who is always attached to Krishna, seeing himself as a part and parcel of Krishna, that in the same way that Krishna is sentient, we as his emanations, we as sparks from Krishna, we're also sentient. But the difference is, he's the whole and we're the part. So the position of the part is to serve the whole. That's natural. The hand puts sweet rice in the mouth sends it to the stomach, and when the stomach enjoys, not only does the hand get nourished, but the whole body enjoys as well. That's why one who begins his engagement in the service of the Lord under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master never goes back to the dry, speculative process of the jnanis or the mental speculators. Krishna confirms this in the 35th verse of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Yajgadvana pranamaham evam yashasi pandava yena bhutini sheshani drakshasi atmani atomai. Having attained real knowledge from a self-realized soul whose senses are under control and who never sees themselves as apart from Krishna, you will never fall again into illusion, as Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. For by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, they are mine. Prabhupada says the perfection of life is to become the servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Lord. If one is fortunate enough to take shelter of a pure devotee, hear from him about self-realization, and follow in his footsteps, one will gradually himself be elevated to a position of a pure devotee. And what is the stature, what is the position of those who are engaged in devotional service? Here in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Sukham adhyadikam yatad buddhi gram vedi chatra nachavayam stitas chalati tatvaraha yam labdabcha paran manyatena dikam tata gurunavi vichalyate. In the stage of devotional service, in the stage of serving the Lord called samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self. In pure realization, you cannot see the self without seeing God. You cannot see God without seeing the self. They're part and parcel, because the self is part of God, and God is the source of the self. So the self-realized soul is by definition a God-realized soul. A God-realized soul is by definition a self-realized soul. Prabhupada says here, this perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self, which means to relish and rejoice in the service, the eternal service, constitutional service of the self to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. It is the self-realized soul who is actually self-controlled. Why? Because he is surrendered to Krishna. He is transcendental because he has nothing to do with mundane scholarship. For him, mundane scholarship and mental speculation, which may be as good as gold to others, are of no greater value than pebbles or stones. And we'll finish right here now with this one last concluding sentence by Srila Prabhupada. Our discussion this morning of what are the symptoms of a self-realized soul and what makes a self-realized soul and the benefits of attaching oneself to a self-realized soul like Sutta Goswami, Sukadeva Goswami, or His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who says these words: only the pure devotees can know something of the inconceivable transcendental qualities of Krishna in the cause of all causes, in his omnipotence and opulence, in his wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, because Krishna is benevolently inclined to his devotees. Seeing Braja Raman Das, Vaninath Prabhu, Varsan, and Sundari Priya, and Govinda, Joe, Mala are still with us from the beginning. Thank you so much for being with us this Tuesday morning, April 21st. We'll be back tomorrow. Look forward to spending some time with you again at 7:30 tomorrow for Srimad Bhagavatam class. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shout out to Thomas, Govinda Dev, Sundari Priya.